I've spent the last 6 months rebuilding my golf swing, and that has caused me to miss a ton of greens. Yet somehow, my scores have never been better. This is how I've learned to rely on my short game to shoot more consistent scores, and how you can too.
A couple rounds of golf that kind of show this in the craziest way possible. The first one is I shot an 80 with only hitting 3 greens in regulation. So you can just imagine I was kind of getting up and down from pretty much everywhere. And then the second is I shot an 81 and only hitting 5 greens in regulation. So this was in the last month or two, so these are just the ones that just kind of come to mind. That's really what's been happening. I just feel like my approach game hasn't been good, but my short game has stepped up. Let me finish out this hole and then we'll talk about the step number 1, which is the easiest to implement. Talk to you guys soon. All right guys, so as we drive up to hole number 3 here, I want to talk about step number 1. Step number 1, and I always start a lot of my changes in my golf game with this. It's a mentality change, it's an expectations change, it's understanding what you need to do, what your priorities are when you miss a green, right? I think the most important thing to get better at this game, what I'm starting to realize is you have to avoid double bogey. So the more double bogeys you avoid, the better chances you have of scoring well. So once you miss a green in regulation, your next shot, its top priority is hitting the green. That's your number 1 priority. If you're short-sighted and you have to play some crazy shot that's going to jeopardize your chance of hitting that green, you elect not to do it. So even if that puts you 20 feet, 30 feet past the hole, but you hit the green, your chances go up significantly from there to avoid a double. With that said, it's important to know how often people are getting up and down. So scratch golfers get up and down about 55% of the time. So there's a lot of times they miss greens and they just don't get up and down, just call it a bogey and they move on with their day. And I think that's really, really important. Hitting the green on that next shot, even if it puts you at 20 feet past the hole, is going to free you up as long as you understand that that's all right. There's been so many times where, I missed a green and then I hit it to 20 feet and in my head I'm already like, that at least guarantees me a bogey, and that frees me up so much mentally that I end up making the putt, the 15-footer or the 20-footer, to save my par. And it's just because I kind of let go of that bad shot, or I let go of the chip, and now I'm in my putting mode and I go through my routine, and that gives me the best chance of holing that putt. So step number 1 is realizing the important part is making sure you hit the green on your next shot, and then just kind of understanding that you don't have to get up and down every single time to have a good short game. So with that said, let me hopefully make this hole in 1 here on number 3, and then we'll talk about step number 2. Talk to you guys soon. So step number 2 is finding a technique that works for you. So there's so many different options when it comes to short game. And that's why honestly it's so fun and why people like it so much, because you can get so creative, right? But you need to find something that's like a nice foundation for your technique. There's a ton out there. The technique that I use is called the dead hand wedge. It was made popular by Jason Day. So Zach actually taught it to me, and I actually have a full video on it. And I'll make sure to put it at the very end of this video so you can just click on it and watch it after this. So the dead hand wedge is really, really simple. You're essentially trying to keep your hands as quiet as possible. So not trying to hinge them too much. And then you let your body sort of rotate through the ball. And then you want to feel like your belly button and your hands are really low at finish, and you kind of want to have your belly button pointing towards the target at finish. This technique has just made it really, really easy for me to make like consistent and good contact with the ball. So I'm not thinning it or chunking it a whole lot. Yeah, when you have your mind free from all that stuff, you can really just focus on getting the ball closer to the hole. But yeah, so that's step number 2, finding a good technique that works for you. Like I said, I took a lesson to learn this technique, and I'll have it linked at the very end of this video if you guys haven't seen it yet. Strongly recommend you do. It's a really, really good lesson. But yeah, let me continue playing this hole and then we'll talk about step number 3. So let's talk about step number 3 really quick. And step number 3 is probably the most obvious, what you were probably expecting for me to say, and it's just very much required. And it's, you gotta incorporate short game into your practice routine. That's an absolute must. But yeah, I think it's important just to start incorporating it. Like if you don't do it at all, just at least, you know, do it for 5 minutes or whatever, and then continue to add a little bit more time. You'll find that once you get pretty comfortable with your short game, it just becomes really, really fun to practice your short game because like I said earlier, I mean, that's what makes the short game so much fun. It's like you can get creative and you can play different types of shots. So what Zach told me to do was something that Tiger Woods always said, which was never play the same shot twice. If it's a crowded green and you can only go to one specific flag, we'll hit it from different lies, or hit different shots, hit different trajectories, or try to add more spin or whatever. Just try to like get creative and never hit the same shot twice. My practice routine when it comes to my short game, it's just a lot of games. So I'll give myself 10 different balls and I'll go to different pins every single time. If I get it within 5 feet, then I give myself 1 point. If I get it inside of 3 feet, then I give myself 3 points, and just kind of play 10 shots like that and see how many points I can accumulate. So every time I'm out practicing, I try to devote at least 30 minutes to my short game. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like a burden because it's actually really, really fun. So that's step number 3. Make sure you practice, but practice effectively and have fun with it. Honestly, enjoy yourself. All right, let me play this hole and then we'll talk about step number 4, which is going to be the most controversial out of all of them. So step number 4 is to remove as many variables as possible. And what I mean by that is there's so many different things that affect a shot, right? So try to minimize the amount of opportunities that there are for those things to be inconsistent. So for example, the first one is being the ball that you play. So play one consistent ball. Like, I'm not saying go and buy premium balls, even though I do think they do help and they add a lot more spin around the greens and a lot more control and feel around the greens. But even if you feel like you don't want to spend that much money on a Pro V1 or whatever, just like use the same type of ball. Just using that same ball helps you out significantly because your mind starts to understand subconsciously how that ball is going to react once it hits a green. So that's one variable. Another variable is you have different wedges in your bag, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to hit all of them. I hit 90% of my shots around the greens with my 56. It's just my favorite club in my bag. I know how it's going to feel. I know how it's going to interact with the ground. I know how it's going to interact with the ball. It gives me that much more comfort. And it also like frees me up to just really focus on the important part, which is like trying to figure out how to get the ball closest to the hole. So that's another variable. The third variable, which I think this one kind of depends on the person, but I have one stock shot that I love to play, and I play that majority of the time. But yeah, and then the fourth variable is like clean your wedges, clean the grooves of your wedges. I can't stress how important that is. Like, dirt on your grooves means you're not going to have consistent spin, and spin is control. Like, control is pretty much everything. So get yourself a brush. Frogger actually sent this to me once I posted that video that I got new irons. Quite honestly, I absolutely love this brush, and the main reason why is that you can remove the actual heads from it. So if they get too dirty or they get damaged and you need to replace them, like, you just have to replace this and not the entire thing. Another great thing is that the deep groove cleaner, which is this little pin, actually like comes down and hides, which is really nice. If you've ever carried a bag and you had one of these, like, I've gotten poked before and it's kind of annoying. So it's nice that you can kind of like retract it and put it down. You don't have to think about it. But yeah, this guy's really nice. Frogger's running a promotion right now for 20% off if you go to froggergolf.com/earndog. Yeah, I strongly recommend it. I think it's really good, and it's at a really, really fair price point too. Let me continue playing this hole and then we'll wrap up the video. So let's recap really quick. Step number 1 is to have a mentality shift, an expectations shift. Understand that your main priority should be to hit the green on your next shot, and that will definitely free you up to focus on the putt and try to get up and down. Remember that scratch golfers get up and down about 55% of the time, so they're not perfect. So if you have to, just make sure you're on the green and get out of there with a bogey at worst. So that's kind of the first step. Step number 2 is to find a technique that works for you. I talked about the dead hand wedge technique, but there's a lot. There's people that like bump and run everything. There's people that like to add a ton of spin. Just try to figure out what works for you. The dead hand wedge works for me really, really well. I'm gonna link it at the very end of this video. In about 30 seconds, you'll see it. Step number 3 is to practice like efficiently and effectively, and just make sure that you're adding it to your practice routine. And then step number 4, the most controversial, at least I think, but I think it's also one of the most important ones, is to remove as many variables as possible. Pretty much become a one-trick pony and really learn to master your one shot with that same ball, with that same wedge, and that will help you clear up your mind to make sure that you're focusing on the right thing, which is trying to get the ball as close to the hole as possible. So with that said, that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Introduce yourself down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Give it a go. I mean, it has really transformed my game. I get up and down a ton, and I really do think all the things that I've implemented this year and that I talked about in this video have helped me get to that point. I'm really hoping that my approach game gets better so that I don't have to rely on my short game as much, but ultimately I think it's going to help me in the long run to really have focus on my short game as much as I have this year. So with that said, I hope you guys are shooting low scores, playing great golf, and I'll catch you guys next week. Take care, y'all.